Good morning. Tim Hudak and the PC caucus have repeatedly said that we need transformative ideas that stand up for Ontario taxpayers by taking action to balance budgets, pay down debt, and create private sector jobs. We've put on the table ideas to deliver job-creating tax relief, affordable energy, and a mandatory, across-the-board government employee pay freeze for 2 years. And we're not about to let up. Today, the PC caucus is pressing ahead once again with jobs and growth ideas like Freeze, Fix, Reduce, which now includes our Ability to Pay Act. We're calling on all parties in the legislature to join us and support this bill, which seeks to take real action to fix the ongoing problems of ballooning contract salaries for government workers. This legislation is another important step to get our fiscal house in order and ensure scarce tax dollars go towards things that create private sector jobs and attract new investments to communities across Ontario. Thank you, and now I'd like to introduce PC Leader Tim Hudak to say a few words. Tim?
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, folks, for being here. Let me, first of all, I want to thank Jim Wilson very much for his leadership on this issue. The private members bill he'll be bringing forward to actually fix the arbitration system in our province to get us back on level ground, to make sure that pay and benefits and contracts in the public sector reflect the ability of average taxpayers to pay those bills. Because right now, we're not seeing that across our province. And I'm proud that Jim Wilson, part of our PC caucus, that is bringing forward groundbreaking ideas that will put Ontario back on the path of balanced budgets, paying down debt, and helping the economy create good, well-paying jobs. The deeper our debt, the deeper the hole, the worst signal that is to job creators about investing in our province. If we want to attract investment, create jobs in Ontario again, we need to get our fiscal house in order. Jim's bill is an important step in getting there. As folks know, we've repeatedly said we need a wage freeze across the board for all of us in the public sector, MPPs, firefighters, doctors, teachers. We'll continue to press for that. But as I said, a wage freeze is like treading water. It doesn't get you any more trouble, but it doesn't get you to the deep end. So an important question is, what comes next? A big part of the answer, Jim Wilson's bill, the Ability to Pay Act. If we don't have bold reforms to actually drive down the cost of government, then we're going to hit these unaffordable heights once again once a wage freeze comes off. We'll be right back where we started from and staring at a mounting, job-deterring provincial debt load. A major cost to actually getting government spending under control is the ballooning cost of salaries and benefits to government workers. Believe it or not, with 1 million employees and 1 out of every 3 public sector workers in Ontario is considered an essential service, that means that Ontario's salary and benefit costs make up more than half of all program expenses. So about 1 out of 3 public sector workers in the province of Ontario can actually trigger arbitration, declared as an essential service. And at a time when families in the private sector, those on fixed incomes, are struggling to make ends meet, we've seen public sector workers continue to get substantial wage and benefit increases that don't reflect the reality on the ground of families who are struggling just to pay the bills at the end of the month across our province. So here's how we're going to do it. When government employers currently and their unionized employees can't agree on new contracts, the process often gets handed over to an arbitrator. Arbitrators act as a judge, a referee, if you will, and they're given the authority to settle the contract on behalf of the 2 parties. It's commonplace with firefighters, with police officers, with TTC workers, but it even involves librarians and university profs in the province today. The problem is that time after time, these arbitrators are giving out awards and pay increases that the average taxpayer simply can't afford. They're giving out pay and benefit increases that are simply far removed from the reality of those who are in the private sector, and particularly those on fixed incomes. It's time for that to change. But unfortunately, for the last 9 years, the provincial government and our current premier have looked the other way. They've ignored the calls from local municipal leaders, other partners like universities and colleges to change the system. It simply refused to act, knowing full well that some councils have resulted in large tax increases, property taxes, have imposed user fees, or they've cut out services to pay for these arbitration awards. So all of this, significant arbitration awards at the taxpayer's expense. Let me give you a couple of examples. In Stratford, firefighters were recently given a 20% retroactive pay increase. That cost taxpayers in Stratford $1.5 million. Now, Jim and I respect the work our firefighters do. They're highly skilled men and women. They put their lives on the line for all of us. But how many of Stratford or other residents across Ontario got a 20% pay increase? Here in the City of Toronto, TTC workers were given a 6% wage increase by an arbitrator. That's going to cost the City of Toronto an additional $100 million per year. And it's way to line with what the mayor and council brought to the bargaining table. They were seeking a freeze. An arbitrator gave a 6% wage increase instead. It's just not affordable. The bottom line is we have to tackle the underlying things that enable government workers to get pay and benefit increases that are out of line with reality. So Jim's bill and the PC caucus initiative will do three key things. First, all arbitration decisions must reflect ability to pay. That means that specific local, economic, and budgetary factors like the local unemployment rate, local assessment growth, local pay increases or decreases in the private sector will be taken into account. And arbitrators will be bound to explain in writing how they came to these decisions. Another big part of this, we will end this philosophy of too many arbitrators that municipalities have deep pockets. The pockets are empty. You can't get more blood from a stone. We'll take away the ability of arbitrators simply to say that municipalities can increase property taxes to pay for these unaffordable settlements. Secondly, we will establish a panel of independent arbitrators to decide the arbitration decisions of the public sector with a tight time frame of 3 months. We think this is fair, it's reasonable, and will put an end to the arbitration decisions that drag on for year after year, that don't do justice to the taxpayers who have to pay the bills, they don't help municipalities balance their budgets, and they don't help the unions or the workers actually plan for the future. And third, we're going to dedicate an ability to pay division within the Ministry of Finance. We're going to use existing resources, and they would publish comparative information on compensation, as well as proactively disclose all arbitration decisions. We'll call it Sunshine on Fairness. The ability to pay division will ensure that arbitrators are making decisions that are rooted in reality, that reflect what's actually happening in the private sector, the families who have to pay the bills at the end of the day. We sincerely hope that the other parties in the legislature will get behind this bill, help pass it into law so we can rein in overspending and build again a climate for job creation in our great province. Thanks very much. Glad to take any questions that you may have.
Tim, if wages should be frozen, why not, instead of revamping the Arbitration Act, why not just say that from now on, settlements, for the foreseeable future, settlements will be 0, 0, 0? I mean...
So if it wasn't clear, that's certainly our position. A wage freeze across the board for all of us, including the broader public service, so municipalities, universities, colleges, hospitals, for a minimum of 2 years. So if it wasn't clear, going forward, so what I'm saying is, our plan is to freeze, fix, and then reduce the size and cost of government. So, okay, we've been pushing for the freeze. We'll continue to do so. But what comes next after that? And if we want to fix the underlying problems that drove wages beyond the ability of private sector families to pay for them, we need to fix the underlying problems to begin with. So this means when a wage freeze comes off down the road, we'll have an arbitration system that's actually grounded in reality. I think we should make that change today.
Jim, I see a conflict between your first and second recommendations that if the arbitrators must take into account, the local unemployment rate, the assessments, their ability to pay, all this sort of thing, and then make a decision within 3 months. They can't get that. And we know how governments get information together. To get that information in 3 months would be an amazing feat. To have an arbitrator then decide within that time, it just seems each local community, you're asking them to get information that would be tough to compile, or is going to be compiled by one side, which is always going to say, we have no ability to pay, and the unions are going to say, well, yes, you do, and I can't see how you can get to that information.
I'll have Jim speak to this in his research on the bill, but a couple of things. First, we can write a provincial budget in 3 or 4 months. Surely you can come to a decision on an arbitration matter within that time frame. Secondly, that's why we're going to create the ability to pay division in the Ministry of Finance to actually keep these statistics, so arbitrators will have that background info to make prompt decisions. And lastly, let's not forget what this is all about too. We actually want to encourage local decision making and local bargaining. And right now there's the incentive for the public sector unions to run to an arbitrator Why won't they? They've got nothing to lose. They're given wage and benefit increases way beyond what's happening in the private sector. We believe these reforms will actually eliminate that incentive, encourage local bargaining, and we'll have a lot fewer arbitrations down the road if we fix the system from the get-go. Do you want to add to that, Jim?
No, just that Don Drummond fully anticipated your question, and that's why he said in a proactive way this should be releasing information on an ongoing basis so everybody's up to date all the time.
Let me, thanks Jim for raising Don Drummond too. I mean, we've looked closely through his report. He had basically 13 different recommendations on how to fix the arbitration system to make sure that it was grounded in the reality of taxpayers' ability to pay. Jim's bill hits on all 13. You can check off every one of those 13 boxes from the Drummond recommendation, so it's powerful, well thought out legislation.